ADHD is a nervous system that plays by a different set of rules. Under the right conditions, the ADHD brain is a powerhouse. It can do some really, really incredible things. And you'll see a lot of people, high performing people with ADHD, they may not receive a diagnosis until later on in life because they've been able to maybe be in environments that really supported them, where the ADHD was a strength. And so they didn't really have the dysfunction, because that's the key thing with the DSM-5 diagnosis too, is that there has to be impairment in order for there to be a diagnosis, impairment in two settings. So if you are in environments that very much support you, you may never receive a diagnosis of ADHD, although your brain wiring may be set up in such a way that, in theory, by the neurological standards, it would be an ADHD brain. So environment is so important. So it's just a brain that plays by a different set of rules, and it really comes down to appropriate levels of arousal and appropriate levels of stimulation, just broadly speaking. So I always like to reiterate this point too, that ADHD is not a deficit of attention, it's an abundance of it. And the challenge is actually regulating it. And the regulation challenge is a byproduct of not having appropriate access to those neurotransmitters, dopamine and norepinephrine. Dopamine is really the major piece of regulation. I like to think of it as the molecule of possibilities more than anything else. And so that's actually what helps us show up for things. So you got to play by this system's rules in terms of, like, is this interesting? Is this novel? Is there a degree of urgency? Again, hitting on the stimulation piece, because if you have the appropriate levels of stimulation, and it could be rewards or, again, pure interest. So there's opportunities for intrinsic manipulations as well as extrinsic ones. But in the event that those are present, it's a whole lot easier for people with ADHD to move through their life and use their executive function skills that they do have. So hence the paradoxical disorder. So the inconsistent access to the neurotransmitters, as I mentioned earlier, helps kind of bring to light how they can be on and they can be off, because what environments support their nervous system, because then they're going to knock it out of the park. And really the greatest challenge there is getting them to take a break and probably go to the bathroom, or eat some food, which is a different challenge. And then the other side of it is, right, they just they're not able to do anything. And we want to look at the environment as well. And I often talk about the internal environment. It's not even just like, is it interesting? Are you passionate? But also at the level of, the level of the neurotransmitters too. Medication is a way to alter the internal environment, but it's a very personal decision. And what I always say there too is that the data is very strong for it, but nonetheless, it's a very personal choice for any given individual. But with the paradoxes that come with ADHD, we really also want to look at, like, the DSM-5, some of the manifestations of the symptoms, and then the opposite that can occur within that same individual. So a lot of times we'll hear people with ADHD are very careless, they miss details, but then they'll be so keyed into the weeds. Like, you may notice sometimes in your own work that they're telling you all the details, right? And it's really helpful. I find it very helpful to have all the details. But then a part of what helps us help them, right, is the zooming out of, like, what is the picture that we're painting? So they get kind of stuck in one mode or the other, like big picture where you miss details, right? Or little picture, right, where you miss the bigger picture. So they're able to do both. And again, the environment kind of dictates when it's a strength versus when it's a symptom. Similarly, this idea of being easily distracted and poor frustration tolerance, poor persistence, you'll see that in an individual, and then you'll see them have this extreme hyper focus, like an extreme persistence, like work 6 hours straight and knock something out of the park. And it's like, those are very, very different experiences within the same individual. So there's that strength side of it, and then there's the challenge side of it. My favorite one is the not listening to people. I don't like the word listening so much because it's not exactly a choice, but maybe struggling to stay present with people. But then they'll be like the most engaged, empathetic, like, listener that you could have ever spoken with. And then, the other things too, like being forgetful in daily life. So that's part of the inattentive side of ADHD. But then they'll tell you, like, this most random fact about an area of interest that they learned 7 years ago. So there's like this steel trap memory. So it's very perplexing at times, but a lot of the times if we look at the environment in terms of like what inputs are going into the nervous system, this can help to explain why we see, the left side of the table versus the right side. And so again, even in that same vein, we have strengths that come with it, which again are flip sides of those symptoms. So with the kind of distractibility actually comes like curiosity and creativity. In order to be a creative person, you actually have to have a diffuse cognitive style, a diffuse attention, in order to be able to see things that others wouldn't see and make connections amongst ideas that would seem distantly related. Because a more vigilant attentional style would prevent you from considering an alternative because it's auxiliary, it's ancillary. You're just kind of keyed in. So that kind of baseline style of attentional style actually helps a lot of people with ADHD be the creatives that they are. And we call it divergent thinking, being able to generate lots of ideas, different ideas. That also helps them be entrepreneurial. People with ADHD are 3 times more likely to be entrepreneurs than the general population. So part of that is not only being a creative, but a willingness to take risks. And also the attentional distractibility or missing details, because a lot of people will take the risk with entrepreneurship, but if you ask someone with ADHD, they never considered why it wouldn't fail, like why it would fail. It wasn't a thought that crossed their mind. And I often make a joke about how I got into my PhD because, knowing what I know now, I don't know if I'd do it again. I'm very grateful for the outcomes. But my brother told me I was really good at psychology and I should get a PhD. So I said, okay, I think I'll do that. Didn't even think about it. I just, applied and did all the things. And I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. But I appreciate that willingness to leap and not consider why it wouldn't work. So lots of benefits that come with this brain and also lots of challenges. And this kind of brings me to the part of like identity and ADHD and identity and neurodivergence. So individuals with ADHD are obviously very aware of these inconsistencies, but they often struggle to understand why, especially if they've never been diagnosed or they've just been diagnosed. It's kind of like, I don't understand why I'm so on here and then I'm so off there. It just doesn't quite make sense. And so that can kind of be like internalized that it might feel like a choice. And that you're moving through the world differently. You need different things to sometimes be successful. And you can see that in yourself because there's a stark contrast amongst the individuals around you who don't need the things that you need in order to be successful, or they're not having the same like challenges that you're having that are more like externalized, especially in the classroom. Kids with ADHD, it's suspected that they receive 20,000 more negative, comments, feedback, all of that stuff, compared to their, same aged counterparts. And this is coming from the adults in their life, their teachers, instructors, parents, really these authority figures. And so they're receiving much more negative messages. And a lot of times they internalize that. And so it's like, you're different because you're being treated differently. And you carry that with you. And so even as little kids, they often report feeling different, and adults as well. They just always describe moving through the world in a way that feels different than the people that they know that are in their lives. And because of that, there's often a drive to mask in order to fit in. So masking their symptoms so that they can be a part of the community and have, successful relationships. And it's exhausting. And they just know that they need different things and different strategies, which can be really, really frustrating. Because again, it starts to feel like there's a character defect when the reality is it's just a difference in cognition. And this is why diagnosis is so important, accurate diagnosis. This label provides a framework for understanding how their brain works. It helps give people relief that it's not a choice. It's not like a defect. It's literally that ADHD is a difference in cognition. It's at the level of the brain. There's not enough of the appropriate neurotransmitters for them to do what they need to do in the same conditions that other people are in. And knowing that often gives them kind of some clarity, relief, and understanding.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed the content and want more, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. That way, you'll never miss out on the latest updates from Neural Revolution. I greatly value your input, whether you're an individual with ADHD seeking information or guidance on a specific topic, or if you're a practitioner looking for clinical insights to better support your ADHD clients. Please share your suggestions in the comments below. Until next time, take care and get your dopamine on.